Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to OBR Weekly. My name's Barry. I'm publisher of the OBR. That over there, that's Fred. He's the legend. He's been out in Berea the last couple of days watching minicamp. How you doing, Fred?
I'm good. Straight off the field, just trying to recalibrate everything, and two action-packed days, and one more to go, and then a little break.
Yep, little break. Uh, we are going to be taking a break here from OBR Weekly next week. Just a little programming note. One of us is going on vacation. It's not me, but someone is going on vacation. And a well-deserved vacation, by the way. And we will not be here next week, but this week we are here, and we are talking minicamp, and we want to know what you want to talk about. So please hit us up in the chat room with your comments and questions, and we will gear the show around those, because that's what we want to do is we want to talk about what you want to talk about. And Fred is right here straight off the practice fields, and he's been watching this team practice for the last couple of days. So if you want to know what he knows, fire off some questions and we will talk about all that sort of good stuff. So if you are on YouTube, please feel free to let us know and hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. We had to, for bizarre reasons, rebuild our YouTube site and reboot our YouTube site. So we need you to subscribe to our YouTube site so that you know when we go on the air. You get notifications if you're subscribed to your YouTube site. So we went back down to like 2,000 subscribers. So please subscribe to our YouTube site. Get notified when the OBR goes on the air. And we are going to be expanding our schedule with more new shows when we go into the fall. It's going to be exciting stuff, so you want to make sure you subscribe. All right, let's talk Cleveland Browns. First up, Fred, we got to talk about this. It's a big story coming out of camp. Amari Cooper, holding out, not there. And it's hard to kind of really talk in detail about something that's not happening. But obviously, he's in the last year of his contract. Has done very well for this team since he was traded here from Dallas. Has been a consummate professional throughout his career with the Cleveland Browns, and obviously would like to extend his contract and make a little bit more money with the Cleveland Browns. The team does not seem too upset about this. The other players are not. Don't seem to be too fired up about that and seem to respect his decision to negotiate this way. At least that's what I've been hearing from camp. Is that correct?
Well, first off, Barry, I mean, there's 90 guys on the team, and you got to start with the one that's not there. It's kind of like it's like the lost sheep. That's who they got to go find. Right. No, I mean, it's natural. I was a little surprised that Cooper wasn't there, especially when I saw that he was at the softball game. So I thought he was in town, for that's one of the reasons they have the softball game that weekend. But, right. Listen, I've been around wide receivers for a long time. And I will say, first off, with Amari Cooper, and I'm stereotyping him, get me here. Most of your number one receivers that I've been around, even with the Browns, they're diva-type personalities. They just are. I think that goes with the territory. Amari Cooper is anything but that. If you walked up to him in the locker room, you would probably think he was on the practice squad because he'll just start talking to you. He is no respecter of persons. He's a real human being, and I do not see him being a holdout type guy. This is minicamp, okay? He will be there when training camp starts. When training camp starts in about 6 weeks, I think you're fined $50,000 a day for every day you're not there. So I'd be
Right.
very surprised if he's not there to begin with. He's under contract for $20 million this year. I don't think he's going to let that go, first off. I
Right.
think the Browns know how important he is. You've seen them go out of their way to get deals done with guys that they didn't even really need to get deals done with. I am very confident they're going to get a deal done. I mean, I think Brad Stainbrook said that the two sides are talking. Kevin Stefanski said there's been dialogue. I believe it's really about length of time. He's under contract for a year. He's going to be 30 next week.
Right.
He probably wants 3 or 4 years, or he's got 1 more year. So he probably wants 2 or 3 more added on. And the Browns might be wanting to add 1, with a lot up front guaranteed. So I think it's just haggling. I'd be very surprised if it's not done before training camp.
Right.
But the one downside is when they break after tomorrow, even the front offices kind of go on vacation and so forth. So I just can't believe with everything they have going and how they're all in that they would take a chance on letting this fester and get ugly.
Right.
Because I've said this before, you take away Cooper last year or the year before, you really didn't have a lot behind him. I mean, yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones was the second receiver until they traded him. And then it was Elijah Moore. Some promise, but nothing really proven. They were very thin. Now, they went and got Jerry Jeudy, but behind Cooper, you really have potential in Jeudy and Moore. I cannot believe they would let him go where he's not around. Last year he had a little undisclosed injury and didn't practice the first week or 2 at Greenbrier. So I don't think it's a big deal. You want him suited up against his former team, the Cowboys, in the opener, and
Yep.
I'm sure that he will be. So I'm not saying it's a big to-do about nothing, but I'm not concerned that they're not going to get something done with him. I mean, as Jax pointed out, they got $40 million in restructuring sitting there with Deshaun Watson, and when you sign Cooper to an extension, you're going to get relief as well because they'll do what they've done, where it's, minimal the first year, and then backloaded and so forth. So with some guaranteed money in that. So no, he's not there. I don't expect to be him there tomorrow. I think the fine was like $16,000 the first day, $32,000 the second day, and about $50,000 or a little more than that the third day. I think total it's $101,000. I mean, he'll get that back in his new contract. So
Right.
I don't think anybody's sweating this. I mean, guys like Joe Bitonio aren't practicing. Jack Conklin's not practicing. Jed Wills isn't practicing. Jerry Jeudy's not practicing. Even Dustin Hopkins didn't practice. So I don't think it's a big deal. But, yeah, it'll get done. They know how important he is. And the way things are going with wide receivers, the market is skyrocketing. So they'd probably be wise to get something done here sooner than later.
Yeah.
I think some people have said Mike Evans got in the neighborhood of 20, early 20 millions, 20. I think Cooper's at 20 million. If you could bump him up a little bit, give him a couple more years, I think it's well worth it. I mean, until they have somebody that proves to me that they're as good or better than him, why would you take any chances with him? So get the thing done and let's get ready to go.
We've got a couple of follow-up questions from the chat about the whole Cooper situation. Let's just address those now. This one from Fumble13. He says, far-fetched, I know, but if Cooper wants some astronomical number, would you go ahead and trade him?
Probably not. I mean, first of all, you got to get somebody to agree to take his $20 million. and he's going to want a new contract. That's kind of how he ended up with the Browns. The Cowboys didn't want to pay him. You know, he had 3 years, 20 million contract, and they had CD Lamb, and they felt like they didn't need him. And I think that was a mistake on their part. But with that said, where he's at now, a new team isn't going to trade for a $20 million contract. You probably have to eat it. And like I said, until you got somebody as good or better, I mean, he's been very productive. I mean, he's coming off 1,250-yard season last year, the highest in his career, another Pro Bowl season. I think he's been the Pro Bowl now 4 or 5 times. And he's the best receiver the Browns have, you know.
Yeah.
He's just going to be 30, sure. I mean, but that doesn't mean like he's going to get in the wheelchair, you know, next week. You know, he's got a lot of upside, and I just think that they'll be able to come to something. But I don't think you're not going to – I mean, you traded for him, similar contract, had more years on it, but you only gave up a 5th and a 6th round draft pick to get him.
Right.
What do you think you're going to get for him now if he's 30, you know, and he's on the last year of his contract? You basically be giving him away for nothing. And I don't think you have a receiver core that has anybody established that you know is your go-to guy. And you heard what Deshaun Watson said about him. He's the best receiver out there. I mean, numbers-wise, I think he was 8th in the NFL the last 2 years, which is pretty doggone good. And the market is just going crazy. I wouldn't expect him to be asking for Justin Jefferson money. I mean, he's a realist. He knows Justin Jefferson's like 24, 25 in the peak of his career. So, but he does know he's at the end, and I think he wants one more payday at least.
Sure.
You know, we've seen with DeAndre Hopkins and some of the other guys, when they get 32, 33, they kind of start going team to team. So he's kind of in that sweet spot to get that one more extension, you know. I would think it'd be in the neighborhood of 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems like a very rational guy, unless he's got some agent, you know, that's going nuts. So, you know, Fumble 13 obviously knows as far-fetched that he's going crazy with these numbers. And I think that these guys sit down like Jack Duffin indicates and looks at comparable contracts. You know, a comparable contract here being, you know, perhaps Mike Evans' recent contract, sort of paving the way to say, yeah, let's do something, you know, akin to that, you know, sort of, you know, providing a map to a solution here. And I think the other thing to note is that as long as Barry can make it work with the salary cap, Jimmy Haslam is not the type of owner who is afraid to spend cash, you know. And again, Jack Duffin points this out repeatedly, that Haslam is willing to spend cash, you know, from year to year, as long as it works with the salary cap, and not the type of owner who typically goes to war with a player over issues like this.
You know, and, you know, I saw Jimmy and Dee were out on the field today. They were out on the field yesterday, but Jimmy was talking to Andrew Barry, you know, when we all discovered that Cooper wasn't there. And I'm sure that was kind of on the topic there, because this is different. It used to be where there was, you know, the draft picks all held out and players were always holding out. That was the only thing they felt they could. You don't have that much anymore. I mean, right now they got, one target to get done, you know, so, right. You know, I would think it's not like there's 10 guys you got to deal with at the same time. You got Amari Cooper, and, you know, as much as Andrew Barry was being praised to get ahead of the curve with Jerry Jeudy, you know, I think 3 years, 51, 52 million. That's a little more than 17 million a year. That seems like a bargain. And he's been praised for that because you're signing him on potential. He hasn't really done that yet. But then when you look at it from the Amari Cooper side, he's been there and done that, and he's sitting there with 20 million 1 year. So he has a good case to say, you just gave this guy more than 17 million a year, and he's coming in here brand new and he hasn't done anything for the Browns. Look what I've done in 2 years.
Right.
I've went over 1,000 yards both years. Nobody's ever done that with the Browns in their history, which is still hard for me to believe with all the receivers they've had. So I think they realize that. Same way with Nick Chubb. I mean, even though he's coming off a catastrophic injury, they were able to find common ground and work things out to keep him around. And by the way, I'm seeing him out there. And to me, I'm starting to get the idea that this guy is really pushing to be ready sooner than later. That's just my thought. I mean, he's not being kept out of view. He's out there jogging around, not doing anything. But anyway, that's here nor there. But I think Cooper can make the case that, look, Jerry Jeudy, I'm glad you got him. He's my, kin from Alabama, but he hasn't done anything compared to what I've done. 5-year Pro Bowler, and you gave him. So we're not talking about much more, So, yeah, I'm pretty confident it's going to get done. And I think Browns fans would like to, you've seen them keep all their star players. Now they're starting to get into a position where you might have to start making decisions and letting guys go. But as you said, Jimmy Haslam, he continues to put out the cash. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the stadium, but there was 2 houses standing, out in Berea. One has been leveled, and I was told the other one is sold, and expecting to level that. Jimmy Haslam, I've been told by a source pretty close situation, anybody that thinks he's going to have spent, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars just out there in Berea. They're going to start getting permits, and they're going to put up things like hotels, shopping, this is just at the facility, and build another building, I've heard, with stuff like medical center and make the existing facility almost all football and move the rest of the organization into, another facility there. So, I mean, they are spending a lot of, and this is not taxpayer funded. A lot of they're putting up. So, I'm pretty confident that they're pretty committed to the whole thing, stadium, Berea, that whole deal there. That was bonus information that I picked up just around in the last couple of days. So you come here, you get information. All I'm saying is, piggybacking that, he's not gonna let Amari Cooper's situation get ugly.
Yeah. It's not going to be fear of spending money. That is for sure. Chat username wanted to follow up, asking, assuming that discussions are ongoing, and that's what Brad Steinberg reported the other day, that they've had discussions. It doesn't seem like either side is going to their corners and pouting. They're going to continue to talk about this. So if we hear anything different, we will let you know. And final question from Kelly Black. Wants to know, did the Browns expect this? And this can't have come as a total shock, right, Fred? Given that he was entering the last year of his contract, and given where he is in his career.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't really been any talk about it. I mean, like, he wasn't at any of the OTAs, but there was some other guys there, Myles Garrett, Shelby Harris, Cooper, obviously. Some showed up for a day or so, but, going into the last year, it's not surprising. I mean, he doesn't want to go out there and break his leg, or suffer some type of injury, where you lose all your negotiating power. So, yeah, I think that, they probably knew inside, if they'd been talking to him, if the mini camp started Tuesday and they said that they've had dialogue, that means, it wasn't like, oh, he didn't show up, get on the phone and let's call. Where's he at? They knew. something was happening. I'm sure the agent called and said, hey, Amari's not coming unless we can get a new deal done. And I don't
Right.
know when that started. If usually there's artificial deadlines that kind of is when deals get done. And like I said, if they don't get something done here in the next week or two and before everybody goes on vacations, I could see it getting done the week or the day or just before they report. They're going to report to Berea, and then they all travel down to Greenbrier together. I think the first
Right.
practice is the 25th. And so I don't think, he's going to miss practice and start racking up the big money fines. But I know I don't have any idea when they'll get done, but I think they'll get it done.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree. It's not something that's going to keep me up at night for sure. All right, so that's the situation with Amari Cooper. Thanks for the follow-up questions in the chat room. If you have more questions, please feel free to hit us up. We've got other things we want to talk about, but mostly we want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So let's go from the guy who isn't there to the guy who is there, regardless of whether or not he's particularly active on a particular day or not, and that's Deshaun Watson. Watson was not throwing today, but how did he look when he was on throwing in 7-on-7s on Tuesday?
Well, it was a significant step because he hadn't thrown in an up tempo situation since he got injured against the Ravens, and that was back on November 12th. So we're talking over 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they weren't hitting. He wasn't being rushed, but he threw with a little more on the ball. I mean, everything he had done had been individual drills and just kind of putting air under it. And, he was throwing. I saw him in OTAs throw a ball 30, 40 yards in the air, but it wasn't like on the line. And he threw some. You can look at the videos that I put up there during the 7-on-7. You can see he threw it on a line to Elijah Moore and a couple of the receivers. And so I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, just like he said, I think he's healthy. I think he's completely fine, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just think that they realize they don't play a game for over 3 months. I think September 10th, let's say June, July. Yeah. You got like 90 days until there's a game. So look at Anthony Richardson over there with the Colts. I don't know if he re-aggravated his shoulder injury or what happened, but they're using Joe Flacco in their camps because Richardson's shoulder's flaring up. And you don't want any chance of this flaring up. I think that the reason he's thrown every other day is to keep the load off the shoulder. And
Mm-hmm.
Stefanski said, he'll be back tomorrow, but then he won't go into the 11-on-11 still training camp. So I think that's just the natural next step. You're going to have 6 weeks off. I'm a little wondering about he's going to go away with some of the receivers in that. Probably Amari Cooper would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to throw.
Oh yeah.
And you hope he doesn't overdo it, there. But I just think that they are just being ultra conservative with him. I think that he said he hadn't felt any pain or anything for quite some time in the shoulder. So I think that's a big sign, that he's fine. I think the big thing is just, can he stay on the field? Can he stay upright? Can he
Right.
play 17 games? That to me is the most important thing, not how he looks in June. Everybody
Exactly.
wants to know and everybody's watching it, but I think he looks as much as he did to me last year in the off season. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought he looked really good in training camp, and then we all know he got hurt and really never got it going. I mean, it was early in the third game that he originally hurt his shoulder, and it was kind of like a fight the rest of the year until they shut him down.
Right. Well, hopefully, Serge, that answers your question about the vibes with Watson and his throwing program. I mean, everything we hear is spun positively coming out of the team
Well,
about how
I
Watson's
talked to some
doing.
of the guys like Naeem Hines doesn't really have
Mm-hmm.
a reason to blow. He said he trained with him out in California in the rehab after his surgery. And he said he's been throwing him passes for a long time. And he kind of questioned, he goes, I know it's rehab, but he made it sound like he didn't even know he was still in rehab.
Right.
His throws were so good and crisp and on the money and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think Hines is just blowing smoke. He said one of the reasons he came here is because he catches passes out of the backfield. They have a role for him there, and he just felt like Watson was somebody he's watched, and he really thought it would be a good fit for him here. So, and other players. I mean, Njoku, different guys we've talked to on the side or whatever have all said he looks fine to us. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
crisp and throwing fine and so forth. So I don't think there's a problem with the shoulder. I just think the biggest thing is, him getting a form back for whatever reason, and he talked a little bit about it. I wrote about it yesterday. He said, he didn't play in 2021, and then in 2022, he was suspended. In 2023, got hurt, and so he just really hasn't played. He's just got to get in a groove. And I think that happens by staying on the field. I've said
Right.
that from the beginning. If the guy plays the entire season, I think he'll have good numbers. He's won games when he's played, and he's got the ability, to really play well. But with this defense and what they have on offense, he does not have to come out of the gate being an elite quarterback. He
Yeah.
just needs to stay on the field. I think he'll play his way into being even a middle of the pack quarterback. That's obviously not what they traded for and gave the contract for. But if he just is middle of the pack, I think the Browns can make the playoffs. For them to win the Super Bowl, which is their goal, he's got to get to a upper echelon level,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be top 10, top 12, I don't know. But I think that he can get there. I just think that he's looking good now. I think he's where he needs to be. The next step will be training camp.
Right. Uh, Gillen here talks about Watson playing smarter. Has Watson talked, this offseason about contact, running into contact, or sort of playing uh, less aggressively with his feet or anything like that?
Yeah, he was asked about that yesterday, and he said he kind of poo-pooed it and said, look,
Mm-hmm.
I play the way I am. The hits I took, he said, that one against Tennessee, I mean, I went in, it wasn't that tough of a big of a hit, and
Right.
he said that he said the one that he got hurt against the Ravens, he didn't feel like that was that tough of a hit. I think the point was get rid of the ball. How about getting out of bounds? How about not even taking any of those hits unnecessarily? I think I saw a comment he made. It wasn't yesterday, but it might even been on his podcast where he said one thing he learned, after that injury against the Ravens, that he didn't have to do it all himself because he was limited. He had pain in his shoulder and
Mm-hmm.
he injured his ankle. He was dinking and dunking, and he was 14 of 14, let him down the field, and they won the game. I hopefully that he learned from that he doesn't have to do it all himself.
Right.
He has
Right.
playmakers like Njoku and Cooper and Moore and Judy and Nick Chubb and Naeem Hines and guys like that. If he just gets the ball out in their hands quickly, he doesn't have to do it all. And so
Exactly.
that's to me one of the big things is availability is the key, just like you said there. And he's just got to avoid those hits unnecessarily because they take their toll. And hopefully he's learned that, and not, like in the Tennessee game. I remember, he went right up the middle and kind of attacked the the defender, diving, I think, head 1st and
Mhm.
stuff. So it's like, don't do that, go out of bounds or go down or something. Don't give them a chance to hit you. And so, I think that hopefully all this rehab and sitting out, but he said he didn't want his aggressiveness to be taken away and being
Right.
tentative, and I think we all agree with that. But just got to be smarter with this team. You just got to be on the field because you're better than any of the options. I mean, I think Jameis Winston's looking pretty good, and
Mhm.
Huntley, you know, I haven't seen a lot in him, but I think that your best option is having Deshaun Watson out there, and why take a chance of getting hurt if you don't need to? So yeah, I
Exactly.
mean it's a big year for him, and he realized that, and so it will be should be fun, should be interesting, and you can really evaluate him if he plays the whole year. It's really
Yeah.
unfair to evaluate a guy playing 4 or 5 games a year.
Right. Right. I just get that sense that the fan base is waiting. They're just waiting to see if Watson can stay healthy and Watson can play up to this level. And it's a show me situation with the fans and Deshaun Watson this year. There's I wouldn't even say it's like fans are hotly anticipating the season. They're just sort of sitting back and saying, "Show me, let's see it on the field." But let's take a second here before we go into the second half of the show and talk about our friends from Core Home Fitness, who sponsor the program. Core Home Fitness, as you know, if you've been watching the program, they make the best adjustable dumbbells on the market. They make incredible home fitness equipment. Check them out at corehomefitness.com, where you can find their top rated equipment by Consumer Reports and New York Times, Men's Health. You name it. They say that these are the best adjustable dumbbells on the market. They've got other products like the Glute Drive Plus, US based support team, fast shipping, hassle free returns. You name it. These guys know what they're doing. Head out to their site, corehomefitness.com. Check out what they've got. Bring the gym home and don't have to schlep out to the gym, work with overused, beat up equipment. Bring back the best, put it in your home, hit your goals, and get the very best from Core Home Fitness. Thank you very much for sponsoring the OBR and OBR Weekly. So, thank you again to them. Tell you what, we've got some other stuff we're going to talk about. One of them is Jerry Jeudy. He was out on the practice field, you said today, and but was not practicing. Is that correct, Fred?
Yeah, he's dealing with something. He was at OTAs the first week. We didn't see him the next 2 weeks that we were able to be there.
Right.
Wasn't on the field yesterday, but Kevin Stefanski said he was in the building dealing with something. A minor injury, didn't say what. He was on
Okay.
the field today. If you look at my X feed, I have a video of him standing there talking to Dustin Hopkins. Dustin Hopkins, I saw him yesterday and today. Cade York was kicking field goals. I don't know why Dustin Hopkins wasn't doing anything. He's certainly over the hamstring pull. Stefanski said he was 100% when we asked him during the OTAs. So I don't know why he wasn't kicking any. But then again, yesterday he was kicking, practicing that new kickoff, where they're dropping
Mm-hmm.
it in between the goal line and the 20.
Right.
But Jeudy was out there. I don't know if he'll practice tomorrow. I would doubt it if a guy's not. Now, Cameron Mitchell, the cornerback, didn't practice Tuesday. He did practice today. Everybody else that was not practicing, there's 5 or 6 of them that were on the field. Jack Conklin, Joe Batonio, Jedrick Wills, James Prochet, Dustin Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy. A lot of them were coming off injuries. The Conklin, Wills, Batonio, I think he had a procedure sometime But the only one that I know of recently was Prochet has something, and
Hmm.
Mitchell had something. Mitchell was back at practice today. So no, we don't. I'm getting the idea with Judy, it's very minor, but they're like, why worry? Why have him out there and take a chance on pulling a hamstring worse or something like that?
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
I doubt if we'll see him. The biggest question is Jack Conklin. I mean, he was hurt in the first week last year. I thought he would be the farthest along. I know DeJuan Jones, his injury wasn't as severe. He did have surgery, but he looks like he's doing everything. Jedrick
Hmm.
Wills is not. I would think Wills would be ready for training camp because I don't think he had an ACL. His was an MCL, and that's usually not as severe. Um, but Conklin, I saw him. I've seen him out there. He doesn't have a sleeve or a brace on his knee, so I don't know where he's at. Maybe it's just okay. Why even go through the motions? Let's just wait and start training camp. I don't know, but that'll be the telltale sign.
Right.
Last year there was guys like that. We thought Taki would start out on pup, and he went from the beginning. So we'll see, who starts. I think they really are going to have a decision, with DeJuan Jones, Jack Conklin, and Jedrick Wills. If they're not ready, I know they've been trying out different tackles, so it makes you wonder a little bit. With only 1 day left in the off season, if they're just getting a list together, for training camp purposes or what. But
Right.
yeah, no injury significant that I can tell. I expect, a guy like Judy to be ready for training camp and all the ones that are. I just don't know about the guys coming off surgery, namely Conklin and Wills.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about all those offensive tackles trying out, if that was an indicator of some sort of concern about two of our three starting tackles, being unable to practice. But
Well, three of the five aren't practicing, when you throw
right.
in Batonio. So three of the starters of the five starters, Wyatt Teller and Ethan Posick, are the only two starters from tradition. I mean, you got DeJuan Jones at right tackle, so you could count him as a starter. But yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Not good. Not good. But all right. So I am going to erase a couple of questions that I had that you've already answered. Um,
I was
one of the
anticipating.
you're like a mind reader. You're like a mind reader. You know exactly where I'm going with this stuff. Um, but can you anticipate that I'm going to talk about Miles Garrett next? Because I read on the internet, Fred, that Miles Garrett has offered to return kickoffs. So that's interesting, right? How did that whole thing start up?
Well, he was asked today about it because Stefanski, somebody, we talked to him, said, Bubba Ventrone is kind of trying a lot of things, and Stefanski's been involved in the decision making because you could see anything. I mean, you could see a front line wide receiver, a running back there. Um, and so it was kind of a joke, that, and I think Stefanski said, well, Miles is volunteering, to be on that. He said today that he's in the meeting room and he's
Mm-hmm.
willing to do anything and even return kicks. So, I mean, that would be a stretch, but I guess you could have situations like, say you're at the end of the game, the other team scores a go ahead touchdown, and this really looks like it could be a explosive play. And
Mm-hmm.
you think, well, let's throw him back there and see if anybody can tackle him, or
Right.
whatever. I don't know. But I mean, a little bit of the tug of war is between Stefanski giving permission with Bubba Ventrone to just use whoever he wants. If he says, I
Right.
want Amari Cooper, or whatever, or somebody that's a frontline player, Stefanski, and rightly so, has veto power. Nah, we're not going to go that way, and so
Right.
forth. So, yeah, I think it's a long shot, but anything can happen. Nobody really knows until that first game how that new kickoff rule. I've taken a couple videos. They've been working on it in practice. The only
Mm-hmm.
thing we know is you can't move until the ball's
Right.
kicked, and there's two back there between goal line and the 20. And I wonder if it's too explosive, and the penalty now if you kick in the end zone is giving the ball in the 30. And so if it's too explosive, teams might just say, we're just going to kick it in the end zone like we used to and give them the ball in the 30 instead of,
Right.
because with these kickers nowadays, they're kicking from 60 yards plus. If you get a return to the 35, 40, you only got to go about 10, 15 yards, get a
I
first
know.
down, you can kick a field goal.
I know. And the NFL will get what they want, which is an even higher scoring game. I don't think the owners will be happy until it looks like a game of pinball or basketball with people going back and forth to the end zone. But that's just me. I'm old and I say things like that.
I think it's going to be exciting, and I think you're going to now, if you're watching on TV, going to have to push the pause button, because the kickoff, you used to be able to go get your drink or whatever and
Mm-hmm.
come back after the commercial, because they're going to start on the 25 or whatever, because
Right.
every kick was an exercise in futility. You just had these guys running full speed down there and everybody watching the ball go out of the end zone.
Right. Right. Well, with respect to Myles Garrett turning kicks, which not going to happen, but I don't know if you remember. Well, you probably do. This is 20 years ago. Kellen Winslow getting injured covering an onside kick, and Butch Davis just getting ripped to shreds in the media because he had Kellen Winslow Jr. out there covering onside kicks. Can you imagine the media coverage if Myles Garrett were to get hurt doing a kick during a kick return?
Yeah, I mean, you used to have those type guys as your hands team, that you
Right.
wanted guys that could catch the ball. So yeah, I mean, I always thought you were going to say Kellen Winslow, ruined his career then. Obviously, he had a lot more problems later, but
Yes,
buying a
he
motor
did.
scooter and having multiple surgeries because he wrecked that right when he got drafted.
That whole story is a sad story, but hopefully we don't ever hit any point where we are struggling for content enough that we have to go through that again. But I tell you what, one of the things that I did want to talk about is with Cooper gone, we have other wide receivers out there taking advantage of his absence. With Judy not playing, I would assume you get to see a number of guys. Serge wants to know about Cedric Tillman specifically. I wanted to know in general whether anyone is sort of stepping up during this mini camp at the wide receiver position and really showing off.
Well, I mean, there's only so much they can show off in this when no defenders hitting you or anything. But Tillman is a guy who I have him. I think he's legitimately the number 4 receiver with everybody here and has a chance to be number 3. I asked Andrew Berry about that, and he said, no, they really like him and they really think that he can, be one of their contributors. So he's big,
Mm-hmm.
he's tall, he's now in his second year, where he's picking. I think the biggest thing is he's coming from a background at Tennessee where, he had athleticism and just could go get the ball on the go route and go up and get it. As they move to the spread offense and choice routes and option routes where he's got to be on the same page as the quarterback, that's what he's going to have to show. is that he can be, relied on to be in the right place at the right time. But without Judy and Cooper there, he is. It's Elijah Moore and Tillman, kind of your top two receivers. So they're getting a lot of looks. And David Bell's getting some play. Michael Woods getting some chances. Jamari Thrash. So this is a good opportunity for some of those guys that are down the depth chart to show what they can do. And they're going to need, somebody to emerge. There's always injuries, but you're going to have some key play out of your number 4 and 5 receiver, whether it's Tillman, whether it's Thrash, whether it's David Bell or somebody else, Marion Brown. Tillman was even doing some fielding on punts and the new kickoff and so forth. So I really think they have big plans for him. It's really going to be up to him. He's going to have the opportunity, and they didn't go out and get a veteran receiver to be that number 4 guy as of yet. So they're giving him every opportunity, I believe, to move into that 3rd, 4th slot in the rotation. And I think it would really, really bode well for the team if he can step up and take that role and run with it, so to say. So yeah, I think he's getting a lot of opportunity. That's why you're seeing him a lot in the videos, because Cooper and Judy aren't there. And so he's right at the top of the depth chart. So
yeah, perfect time to get some targets in minicamp, show the team what you can do, and hopefully he's taking advantage of it. Couple questions from the chat room I want to get to here. Naughty Innocence writes, with Rob Ryan recently calling Max Crosby the best defensive player in 30 years I've coached, do you ever miss him and those type of sound bites he provided, Fred? Rob Ryan.
Well, yeah, I mean, a little hyperbolic, sometimes, 30 years, you don't remember the guy you had the year before. It's always who you're with now. It does you no good to throw out. But no, I mean, we talked to him some, and he always, had good quotes and so forth. But Jim Schwartz has good quotes. He's probably the best coach right now on the staff with quotes. Mike Vrabel, we'd like to talk to him. Maybe, I don't know if a consultant gets to talk, but I'm sure he's got some good ones, more entertaining than maybe Kevin Stefanski. But I mean, yeah, Ryan, he didn't win, but he had good quotes, and he's part of that regime when the Browns, was perpetually, trying to win games. So I'd take winning games and playoff appearances over sound bites any day, but he was entertaining in his day with the Browns.
And any player you remember who is particularly quotable?
Oh boy. There's been a lot of them. Corey Fuller, he was always spouting about something, and a lot of times he didn't pronounce things correctly, people's names, so that was always kind of funny. But yeah, the more recent years, guys aren't as quotable because everything. I'll say this: with social media, things have changed quite a bit, because now it just, everything instantly goes viral. And used to, when you had a tape recorder and you weren't sticking a phone or a camera in somebody's face, they talked a little freely, and it wasn't like it was getting everywhere. But back in the day, the Hanford Dixons and Frank Minifield, they were a barrel of laughs to talk to, and quotes and the things they said. One of the all-time was Bubba Baker. I mean, he had more stories, and different things. So, if I start thinking, there are a lot of guys over the years, but nobody really in recent times has been, tremendously talkative or great to kind of for saying something. I mean, even OBJ would say some outrageous things, but
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. Well, during my brief foray into going into locker rooms and talking to athletes, I always thought Gerard Warren was pretty quotable. He was a pretty good quote machine. I remember from my early days trying to be a beat writer. But I always thought when I went into the locker room that the nerd detection circuits went off around that locker room. And I was just going to get thrown out and someone was going to start screaming nerd at me. But would have been accurate and deserved. I just got tossed out of the locker room. At any rate, let's see what else we got here. This from Stephen Glock in YouTube. Good question. I don't think there is an onside kick with this new kickoff rule. Is there, Fred? Or am I just... I haven't read anything about onside kicks with this new kickoff rule. I would think
Yes,
just
I'm
bounce
not
it
an
down the field.
expert. I'm not an expert on this, but Ventrone told us that you have to declare it,
Okay.
and you can only do it like in the fourth quarter
All
if you're
right.
behind. And I think it's fourth quarter only. But then it goes back to the traditional lineup. If you
Okay.
declare it, then it's like it used to be. Everybody lines up where they used to, and it's like it was. But you have to tell them. You can't in the current lineup just like kick it 10 yards and go get it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I had never read that. I'm still getting used to the notion of people
Well, I think
lining
it's
up the 30.
you have to get it to land between the 20 and the 10. I mean, that's the rule,
Right.
And so I think it's a live ball, if the guy fumbles it or doesn't pick it up or whatever, but the chance to get down there from where you're at before they pick it up is kind of
Right.
like, remote. So it's not something you can plan. But no, if you want, you can do the onside kick, but you got to be behind. It's got to be late, and you have to declare it. So, I mean, that's why I ask him that question is because then you can't win the game if if you can't get the ball back if you're behind at the end of the game. So that's why
Right.
they have that, and it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. And it is chat username says it's too complicated. And I can relate. I'm old and I'm easily confused, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get the hang of this. But I don't have TikTok installed in my cell phone either. So Santo Bermuda wants to know who is the best quarterback you have seen. And I think he means seen play live here. I'm sure you've seen Tom Brady play live because over the years. But did you ever see Dan Marino play live, Fred?
Yeah, I actually saw Marino. I saw the game that he ruptured his Achilles in like the first quarter, and a guy named Scott Mitchell, left-handed
Oh yeah.
quarterback, came in and played well, and he got a big contract because of it, and he really was kind of a bust. But
Yep.
so that I think that was the only game I saw Marino play. It was at Cleveland Stadium, so I didn't really see much that game. I saw Brady. I remember walking in the tunnel when I was getting to the stadium, and you have to walk down there, and there was a player in front of me, and it was number 12, and it was Tom Brady. He was walking out to the field. I had no idea he was like 6'6". I was
Mm-hmm.
expecting him to be about 6 foot or something, and I'm like, I couldn't believe how big he was. I don't remember how well he played that day, but I saw him a number of times. Obviously, he's probably the best I've seen. But I saw Dan Fouts play and light up the Browns back on a Monday night game. The first game I covered on Monday Night Football, it was Brian Sipe against Dan Fouts, and the Chargers lit up the Browns like 44-14 that game. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look at the list, but I go back to that was 81. So I saw Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar and with the Browns, and I saw, Fouts and some pretty good ones over the years play as well. But they all kind of run together. You know, you see so many games, hundreds of games, and
Right. Right.
you see him on TV and all that. But I have to say Brady live because I did see him in person.
Right. And Peyton Manning took on the expansion Browns too, didn't he, when he was with the Colts and just owned them
Oh
uh,
yeah, I
as
mean
was
Manning,
expected.
and I'm sure there's a lot of names that would pop up. Drew Brees saw him,
Hmm.
but it's hard to argue with the Tom Brady.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly is. Certainly is. All right. From chat username wants to know what starting position might be upgraded via free agency, if any. I guess we're talking about at the end of this season. Um, so we'd have to think a little bit about who might be free agents
Well,
at
yeah,
the
we
end of
don't
this
we don't
season.
even know. I'll just address it for this year. I think what I've seen of Jordan Hicks, I think he's a definite upgrade over Anthony Walker and Sion Taki at linebacker. I like what I've seen of him. He looks quicker, and I liked those other two guys. Quentin Jefferson looks like a really good pickup. I think
Hmm.
he's probably got a good chance to be a starter along with Dalvin Tomlinson. And Shelby Harris played well last year. So, um, as far as the guys they brought in this year, haven't really seen enough of Judy to know, what he's going to do.
Right.
After this year, yeah, a lot of questions. With what are you going to do with Elijah Moore? What are you going to do with Amari Cooper? I mean, the Cooper question could get settled pretty quickly, I would think. If they sign him to an extension, then you don't have to worry about him hitting free agency.
Right.
Moore's going to be a free agent as we stand now. Um, some of these guys on 1 year deals, like Maurice Hurst. I mean, it's going to be how Michael Hall and some Quentin Jefferson, some of these other guys do.
Hmm.
Um, Same way with Jordan Hicks. It's well in advance, to start talking about that. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have poor play by some, but for the most part, I think the biggest questions really after the year could be on the offensive line.
Yes.
You got a lot of age and a lot of big contracts. I mean, as I understand right now, you got Conklin, Batonio, Teller, all over 10 million in contracts and
Hmm.
getting up there in age. And you got to deal with the Jedrick Wills contract situation
Yes.
if he's going to be a long-term left tackle, or you're going to move, because I mean he's getting 15 million next year, so you'd have four linemen over 10 million as it stands going into next year.
Yeah. And they did seem to draft themselves, with a purpose, to perhaps lighten the salary load at guard, perhaps over the course of the next year. But it's something that we will keep an eye on as the year goes on. Um, uh, Throughout 2024. And last question I want to ask you, Fred, is you wrote an article on, 5 things to look at, during minicamp. And I think we've addressed all of them with maybe one exception, and that is Ken Dorsey's offense. There's been a lot of talk about choice routes, things like that. Obviously, we haven't seen Cooper, we haven't seen Judy catching passes out there during minicamp. But have you noticed any real difference in the offense from the way that it looked last year? Are there more receivers on the field? Has there been discussion on the field about these choice routes? Deciding when to go in one direction versus another, or anything along those lines.
Haven't seen enough of it because they're not seeing enough 11 on 11. And you're not seeing Cooper, you're not seeing Judy, you're not seeing Deshaun Watson. But um, the only thing I'd say that I've seen more of is seems like a lot of motion, like somebody's in motion a lot, like whether it be Elijah Moore, whether it be a running back, one of the like Pierre Strong or Jerome Ford or Dante Foreman. seems like there's going to be more motion. And I think that's part of running. They've run almost everything out of the shotgun, but that's not surprising because this type of a camp is almost all passing. They really don't do many running plays because it's kind of fruitless. There's no blocking or blockers and things like that. So no, I can't really say that I've seen. We'll start to see more of that at Greenbrier. But then again, last year I remember in training camp, last year what we saw, I don't really remember seeing a lot of it working or in as the season went on. This I'm expecting to be a little more pronounced because I'm expecting more spread, more receivers on the field. But right now you're limited with the number of receivers you even have. So maybe that's why they're not all out there. Plus, they're not going to really. That's the one advantage they have. Last year with the defense, Jim Schwartz had really not coached with the Browns. And so that was kind of an advantage early in the season. Nobody had film on what he did with the Browns. And this is an advantage. People can look at what Dorsey did with the Bills, but it's not with the Browns, and Kevin Stefanski has input as well as Deuce Staley, as well as Dorsey, and they've kind of meshed it together. So all I know is Watson said yesterday he's familiar with this because it's similar to what he did with the Texans. And so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Where it's probably going to be more read and react, quick throws, get the ball out, run out of shotgun. And I think these are things that anybody would say is more to Watson's skill set.
Yep. Well, I'm excited to start seeing that in action, but we're going to have to wait a few weeks, after this week, before we see Cleveland Browns on the field again. We are not going to be here next week. As there is a vacation afoot. But we will return on the 26th of June. Yeah, the 26th of June. OBR Weekly will be back at 7 o'clock, and we will hopefully see you then. God knows what will happen between now and then. Hopefully there will be some wonderful things to talk about. Hopefully Amari Cooper will be signed and things like that. So, we will see you on the 26th of June. Thank you very much, Fred, as always. Always appreciate your wisdom. Thank you for hanging out with us in the chat rooms, all your questions. Great stuff. We'll see you on the 26th. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. See you guys.